Welcome to the episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Finally, we're doing one of my cars. You've been saying in the comment section I haven't had one of mine on for a while. That's because, well, if you saw the restoration blog a couple of weeks ago, you know we're finishing up a bunch of stuff. And this one took a long, long time. This is a 1953 Cunningham, a C3. It was built by a guy named Briggs Cunningham. Briggs Cunningham was an American sportsman. He was a racer. He won the America's Cup. He was an athlete. And when he married his wife in 1929, they were the richest couple in the world, or just about the richest couple in the world. He never had a job, but he wasn't one of these guys that just sat around. He was a true sportsman, a great athlete, played every sport very, very well, tennis, everything, but he excelled in yacht racing and in sports car racing. He decided he wanted to win Le Mans in an American car built here in the States with an American power plant. He raced Jaguars and Ferraris. He even raced a Cadillac known as Le Monster. It was an early Cadillac with an aerodynamic body. It was an enormous thing that he raced at Le Mans. You can see a really weird looking thing. He ran the Briggs Cunningham Museum for years with all his cars, and he had every car. When he got married, he ordered a 1929 SSK Mercedes supercharged, and he had it delivered by, what was his name, Carcciola, the famous German racer at the period. I mean, he just lived the life. I mean, he was I guess he would be a billionaire by today's standards, but multi-million dollars went a long way back in the 20s and 30s. Anyway, in the early 50s, he decided to make his own automobiles, and he put his factory in West Palm Beach, Florida, because that's where he lived. Why not build cars where you live? And he realized it was way too expensive to build cars in the United States. So what he did was he built his car. He used a Chrysler Hemi 331 engine, and he had the bodies built by Vignali in Italy. The bodies were sent to Italy. And you might recognize this as the same body on a 212 Ferrari, which it is. It was the same body. You know, after the war, the Italian bodybuilders would sell bodies to anybody that wanted them. Briggs Cunningham built 25 cars with the idea of homologating them to run at Le Mans. They did run at Le Mans. He had some success, but he didn't win. And he built 25 cars. But the really cool thing, all 25 exist, and not one of them was ever wrecked. And this was not an inexpensive car. You know, in the 50s, it ran between $9,000 and $15,000. When you realize a Cadillac was maybe $4,000 at best in the early 50s. Most Fords and Chevys were under $1,000, so it was a hard sell. It had magnesium wheels. Normally, this would have had 16-inch magnesium wheels. I still have the original magnesium wheels. It came with it. I was a little afraid that they would be, there'd be a porosity problem and they would collapse on me. So we had these replica wheels made. We made them 15-inch so we could get some tires. You just can't get 16-inch tires anymore. The hardest part was, well, doing the whole car was the hard part. Jimmy, our metal man, did an excellent job on the trim. Per, our painter, he did the paint. I think he did it twice just to get it right. It's a pretty amazing car. Still has the engine that came with it. The only upgrade is, it originally came with a Chrysler semi-automatic 2-speed transmission. You had a clutch, you put it in first, and then you could shift without the clutch to second. And it was just horrible. I mean, I still got that transmission if you ever want to go back to it. We put a Tremec 5-speed in, kept the original brakes. It was a 6-volt system. We converted it to 12 volts, although we did use a converter to keep the 6-volt Ford radio, which is the radio it came with. I think it has the most beautiful dashboard of any car, and a lot of cool little touches like this. You see that? You open the door handle. But the cool thing about these cars is they're all documented. An old friend of mine by the name of Dean Batchelor, he wrote this book on the Cunningham. This was pretty much had everything you need to know up until they came out with this book. You know, Cunninghams became more and more valuable, and then all of a sudden, this big in-depth thing came out. I had this gentleman here, Richard Harmon was here, and the cool thing is, every single car is documented. Every single thing about my car is in here. This is what it looked like when I got it. I'll show you this. We'll get some close-ups. Who all the owners were. The guy I bought it from bought it in 1988, put it in his garage with the idea of restoring it, and just got more interested in the Porsches, and it just sat and sat. And then I got it, and we put it back to, these are the original colors it came with. But the whole history of all 25 cars is documented, and that's what makes these valuable. You can see how many owners, what happened, what they changed. The engine was changed right after the owner got it. He put another Hemi engine in it, put dual quads on it, but the whole history is here, and that's what makes it really kind of cool. Let's show you what's happening under the hood of this thing. In a lot of ways, I think this was cooler than the equivalent Ferrari at the time, because that would have been only, what, 2.5 liter, something like this. This had a big Chrysler Hemi in it, and believe me, it's really fast. We've done some modifications to the motor. There's a company called Hot Heads, which does aluminum heads for these engines instead of the cast iron. That saves you about 150 pounds. And, you know, port and polish and all that kind of stuff. So, it's, as I said, it's putting out about 360 horsepower. Jimmy, our metal man, made the air cleaner here himself for the dual quads. But as you can see, I think this is the sexiest, prettiest engine, certainly the 50s and 60s. It's almost as cool as a Ferrari V12. Original generator, it's been upgraded to 12 volts. And there's a guy, a friend of ours named Don Allen, he calls them generators. He takes a generator, turns it into an alternator. So that's pretty cool. It's got, well, I guess you get 3 people in front, but essentially it's a 2-seater car. Didn't really have bucket seats back in the period. Let me bring Jimmy in. Jimmy, come on in.
How you doing, Jay?
Show how hard this was. Jimmy is only 21 years old, and you can see the wear and tear it's taken on his, it's exhausting.
It's killing me.
It's killing me, I know.
It's killing me.
It's tough, it's tough. Tell us some of the problems, because you certainly told me. So tell us some of the problems that we had here with this. Because this trim is specific to this car.
It is. It's a handmade car by Vignali. Everything's custom made, every piece of trim, so nothing's going to fit or work any other way. So a lot of the trim was lead-filled brass. Some of it couldn't be redone, some of it could be. The big pieces you see in the front part are all original, they're reworked. The grille is all reworked, it's original too. And the small ones here that were lead-filled are a big problem to re-chrome because they're pretty much weathered. The lead that's inside of them will go away when you replate them, so we recreated those out of solid brass.
Yeah.
So they're actually split all the way in half and then filed and, you know, have the same radius and profile. So we recreated all that, saved all the rest of the trim pretty much original, all the aluminum.
Because most cars, American cars back in the, normally this would be like a pot metal and you just chrome it, right?
Or stainless steel, yeah.
Yeah, but this is brass.
Solid brass. Actually, these pieces here are made out of 4 pieces that you see running all the way to the back, and they're all brazed together. And, you know, each piece is custom made because both sides of the car, being that it's handmade, like a lot of the handmade Italian cars, they measure different lengths. Right. So nothing would interchange. It had to be actually hand fit.
Right.
So we had that. We saved most of the original trim, and even the stuff on the interior here that's aluminum, it had a real interesting engraving inside of it. So we saved all that inside, which is very unique to this car only. So we did the best we could to, you know, preserve all that. And then, like you said, some of the custom things we've done are because of the engine and the upgrades, you know, from the exhaust and the intake and, you know, even the air cleaner, stuff like that. But otherwise, the car is pretty much original. Yeah,
I mean, it was a pretty straight car. The real nightmare in these cars is the fenders are welded to the frame.
The entire car is welded.
Yeah, it's all welded. So if you dent a fender, you can't take it off. It's welded. The whole car is welded together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and there's no adjustment on anything, too.
No.
And Per will tell you more about that. He had to do all the fit and finish, so that's where another big fight comes in with these type of cars.
Right.
You can't even adjust a latch or a door catch or nothing.
And this is the first car with a 107-inch wheelbase. Up to this point, they were 105-inch wheelbase. Then they made them a bit longer. This is the first car on the 2-inch longer wheelbase. But anyway, Jimmy, good job. Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate
it was fun to do.
Let's bring George in. George did the mechanical work on the car. George, come on in.
Hey, Jay.
George is thrilled to see this thing out of the shop. Did a great job. It runs terrific. Tell us some of the problems we had doing this.
Well, figuring out what front suspension the car had so we could get the right kink pins and bushings and all that, and it wound up being a Mercury.
Right. Because they used a lot of Ford parts. He used what was around at the time. It has a Ford radio and stuff, but when we got it, the springs were sort of sagging. It was a bit compressed.
I think Mercury was a beefier car back then.
Right.
So Mercury front suspension, I did the easy stuff, the brakes, put the engine in, you know.
And it still has the original brakes.
Yep.
No power booster.
Nope.
No power. No, you gotta. These are anti-lock.
It stops pretty good.
No, it stops pretty good.
But
you
it
have
goes
to lock
faster
your
than the
knees
brakes.
actually to get the I mean, it's if you've driven a regular modern car and you step on these brakes, you're going to think, what's going on here? But it really is a Joe Weider kind of workout to do this thing.
Yeah.
And of course, the engine, the big 331 Hemi engine.
I don't think you pointed out enough of what Jimmy did. That air filter is just gorgeous.
Yeah, Jimmy made this air filter himself.
It's like 6 pieces. 6 pieces. And it kind of a takeoff on your Challenger.
Right. It looks like a modern air cleaner, I guess in a sense it is, but I wanted to make sure, because we had Ed Pink do the engine. He's legendary for doing Hemi engines. And I wanted to make sure it breathed enough and the air cleaners are big enough, because we're going to go with those little ones, and that didn't work.
Right, because the engine's up a little bit and back a little bit.
Right.
So the original air filters wouldn't have worked.
And we put the Tremec 5-speed in, and we got our bell housing from Hot Heads too. They have every Hemi part. They're out of South Carolina, North Carolina, one of those places. But
yeah, one of the Carolinas.
Yeah, it's Hot Heads, and boy, it's just a beautiful, beautiful motor. It really runs strong, runs really hard, really, really good. Any other problems do we have, George?
Well, you know, because we have wider tires in the rear, the springs had to be narrower.
Right.
So we went through a couple of different springs in the rear to get the ride height right, but it wound up the corner weights are right where they should be.
And these wheels, these are sort of made up wheels.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to find these wheels. The original wheels had, they protruded out here and they had just a center cap.
Right.
We machined that off and the back spacing and made the wheels fit the knockoffs.
Right.
But they actually still have lug nuts under the
Under there, yeah. And we still kept the original wheels, but the original wheels were magnesium.
They'll crack, they'll kill you.
Yeah, you'll get killed. You put your foot in the corner and the wheel will just...
Plus the tire was you know.
Tires were cheap clutches back in the day.
Yeah.
But with the 5-speed in it, boy, it really works really, really well. And look at what a clean engine compartment this is. Just beautiful done, beautiful job. We have a modern battery because you don't want to put some lead acid thing in there. So.
Right, the original master cylinder, you had to pull the carpet up and check the fluid. On a car like this, you want to be able to open the hood and look at the fluid.
Right,
so it's all here now.
Moved it up there.
And the clutch. And
even the little stuff, Jimmy, you had to redo all of these. This is the most annoying door. You go like this, then you put your finger in and you open, then you get your finger gets, this is what this is how I hear George. God! George, you all right? You trying to open the door?
only once.
Yeah,
only once.
See, and then after you open it, it catches you again. So you have to do it like this. So and then you shut it, and then here you go. And then you push it back in. But yeah, really stupid, really funny though.
Yeah.
No air conditioning, obviously. 6-volt radio. As I said, the most beautiful dashboard. Enormous gauges. I don't care how blind you are. You can read these gauges when you're going down the road. Well, let's see. Where's Per? Let's get Per in here. Per did the paint and body work on it.
How you doing, Jay?
Good, Per. Good job.
Thank you, thank you.
This is a tough one, huh?
It was a little bit tougher than usually, yeah, because...
But you're a Chrysler guy.
I'm a Chrysler guy.
Yeah. So.
But here we have steel and aluminum.
Right.
So it's a little bit tougher, but it was coming out good. It's coming out good.
And it's hard to hang the doors and stuff because everything is welded together.
It's welded together, yeah.
The nice thing about that is the car is incredibly rigid.
Yeah.
And incredibly strong.
It is strong.
Yeah. And I think it's a really pretty car. Let's come around the back and see here as well. These are the original colors.
Yeah.
And you got some of the original color when we sanded it down, huh?
Yeah. Yes, we had. Yeah.
It was
absolutely.
white when I got it.
It was white, but I could see the color underneath.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at one of the early restoration blogs we did from 2015, you'll see the car. It looked pretty complete, and it was complete. It was in very good shape. It just hadn't been touched in 30, 40 years, so
Yeah.
it needed a bit of everything. We lost the bumpers on the big, giant, clunky bumpers. I've got them. I don't want to put them on.
No, they're ugly.
Ugly,
They're ugly.
ugly, ugly. And let's open up the trunk and show them the trunk. I unlatched the trunk from behind the seat. Before I open it, I want to give a special thanks to Bernard. You know, Bernard is our shop foreman, and he's out racing this week, so he's not able to contribute to the video here. But he did a great job, and Jim Hall, our fabricator, as well. Let me show you the trunk. Remember, this is a competition car, so you had to carry a spare tire, which means you have almost no trunk room. And your gas filler, of course, is inside there. There's your gas tank, dual exhaust. And that holds the tire pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one of the original
Yeah, yeah.
with the magnesium rim.
One of the original wheels.
Yeah.
We kept that part.
Wow, we closed also.
Yeah, there you go, close also. As you can see, it's a great looking car, and let's take this thing for a ride, and we'll talk more while we're driving. Okay, before we take it for a ride, I want to put it up on our Stereo Coney lifts here. Show you a good job the guys did underneath. I've got a few hundred miles on it, but as you can see, it stays pretty clean. Nothing seems to be leaking. Went through a couple of sets of coil springs before we found the ones that work best. Got some modern mufflers on here, but everything else is pretty much as it is. I mean, look at how massive this frame is, and look at all the bracing in it. Look at this. It's, look at these. Look how thick these are. Pretty cool. As you can see, our transmission bolts right up. Thanks to Hotheads, they gave us that bell housing. Pretty straightforward. Exhaust system. This is the original, is that a breather pipe there, George? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the original breather pipe that came with the car. Keep a little touch, you know. But as you can see, pretty straight. Nothing leaks. Everything's tight. George gets very nervous on camera when he said it had kingpins. It doesn't have kingpins. He was thinking of one of the other cars. I think it was the Chrysler you were thinking of, George. You know, because this is all Chrysler stuff here. Except this is Mercury. So a little bit of everything. That's what Briggs did. But really is a quality automobile. I mean, there wasn't much in America in 1953 that was faster or better looking than this thing. So pretty cool. Come on, let's take it for a ride. Think of what an impressive car this must have been back in 1953. Cost between $9,000 and $12,000. Had a 2-speed semi-automatic transmission. I mean, now we all like, you know, the 5-speed, the 6-speed, the manual box. But back in the day, an automatic was considered quite a luxury. And when the car had this much power, it didn't seem like you were losing that much because of the automatic. You just had so much torque, it could overcome it. So it made a wonderful grand touring car with a unique Italian body. I mean, for a 60-something-year-old car, it actually drives and handles pretty nicely. Like I always say, this is a car you want to drive swiftly, not drive fast, because you will overpower the brakes. Brakes are good, but they're, you know, they're not this, they're not modern. And you might get 1 or 2 panic stops in a row before your brakes begin to fade. But if you drive it sensibly, oh, it's great fun. You just get a lot of feedback. And this Tremec transmission, I can't talk enough about how good these are. I put them in so many cars. This car did have a clutch pedal originally, so it's not like I changed a whole lot. You had the clutch with the semi-auto, put it in first, then you take your foot off the clutch, and then when you drive, when it's ready to shift, you just move it to second, and it would go ka-clunk and go into second. And I guess that was progress. But with the 5-speed, and this torque, bellissimo. So to reiterate, what Briggs Cunningham would do was he would build the chassis in West Palm Beach, Florida, have the chassis sent to Italy, where they would be bodied by Vignali, and then sent back to America again. Can you make money doing that? Not really. You know, at $9,000 to $12,000 a car, that was a hard sell back in 1953. Weren't a lot of GIs coming back with that kind of money in their pocket. And Briggs did it for about 5 years. There was a rule back in the day that if you ran a business for 5 years and you didn't make money, it wasn't a business anymore. It was a hobby. And they would, you know, declassify it and all that kind of stuff, whatever it is. So he just stopped building the cars. But he built 25 fabulous cars, and they're all accounted for. The original horsepower with his engine was 220 horsepower out of 331 cubic inches. With the modern aluminum heads and, you know, porting and polishing and all that, we got 360 on the dyno, which is huge. 2 4-barrel carburetors. This is really the perfect California car to go cruising in. Italian styling with American horsepower. Didn't get any better than this. I'm surprised they didn't sell more than 25 cars, but hey, nobody had that kind of money in 1953. But each one of these was handmade. Well, first thing is, this is the original steering wheel that came with the car. Originally it was wrapped with string, and the string was all deteriorating. We took the string off. The wood was pretty good, so Per and the guys refinished it, and as you can see, it turned out beautiful. The original emblem we never even touched. I like the giant pie plate gauges. This is your main gauge over here. You got a clock, you got oil temperature there, oil pressure there, water temperature, and fuel pressure. Right up here, you've got a tachometer, which looks to be a period correct sun tachometer from about the early 50s. This is the one that's been in the car since the day it was new. You've got a 160 mile-an-hour speedometer, which is probably a little optimistic. There's your ammeter, and then of course your fuel right there. In that book, it talks about nobody knew what this handle was. This is the only car, I believe, that had it. Well, this is a battery disconnect switch. You just turn that, and it disconnects the battery. Then, of course, you had wipers, lights. You had a 6-volt radio out of a Ford. That was the radio that came with it. You had windshield wipers, choke, cigarette lighter, and of course fan, blower fan. And of course this wonderful Tremec gearbox right here. The guys made this shift knob. This netting is all original to the car. We wanted to save that. The headliner, of course, is new, but they all came with this kind of fishnet stuff where you could put, I don't know, sunglasses, magazines, whatever you wanted. I always like these little door pulls on here. These are kind of cool with the little wood insert in there. I don't know what kind of wood that is. Maybe maple? I don't know. It's kind of classy. Cigarette lighter is there. It didn't come with a GoPro camera. We stuck that on there, obviously. As you can see, it's a roomy car. There's plenty of room inside. Greenhouse is really nice. A lot of air flowing through the car. You could drive this thing to New York City if you wanted to. The original interior was red. Obviously, the leather has been upgraded. The original leather is pretty dried and shot. Storage area behind the seats. It did come with twin speakers, which was a big deal back in 1953. At 60 miles an hour, you're barely turning 2,000 RPM. So it cruises very nicely. And the torque just carries you along. Nothing high-tech about the suspension, but very, very comfortable. You know, it's fast, good-looking. This has to be one of the best American cars of the period, although most people have never heard of it. I hope you like this unique piece of American automotive history. If you'd like to learn more about Briggs Cunningham, there are a couple of great websites. Larry Berman runs one. on the web. You go to Cunningham websites, Cunningham car websites, and you'll see Tom Cotter and a bunch of the guys, Chuck, and there are so many guys. Well, there's 25 guys out there. That's how many cars there are. But he was quite a guy, Briggs, a true American sportsman and real race car driver. And I only got to meet him once. He was quite elderly at that time, but it was fascinating meeting a piece of history and finally owning and driving one of his cars. So we'll be doing more and more of my stuff on the website. It just takes a long time to restore. So see you guys next week.
Mm-hmm.